If your truck payment is $1,300 a week, there is a number you have to hit every single week, or you're going to be working for free. Most drivers are never told what that number is, not because they wouldn't understand it, but because once you do understand it, a lot of trucking suddenly stops making sense. And these companies don't want you to learn this. And that's what this video is about. Not telling you what to do, not judging your decisions, and not saying you're wrong for wanting more. This is about explaining the one number the industry avoids talking about and why so many drivers feel like they're running nonstop, but they're never getting ahead. This is something that we hear constantly all the time here at Big Rig Nation. Drivers say, I'm busy, I'm running hard, I'm doing the miles, but I don't feel like I'm moving forward, Patrick. That disconnect really messes with people because in trucking, effort is supposed to equal progress, more hours, more miles, more sacrifice. But when the money never sticks, drivers start blaming themselves. They think that they are the issue. They think that they're doing something wrong. They think they're missing a trick. They think they just need to grind harder to get farther ahead. And you see, this is where the trap really starts. Because this isn't a motivation problem. It's not a work ethic problem. What this is, it's a math problem that nobody has ever explained to you. Trucking talks nonstop about gross revenue. I really get tired of hearing so much about grosses. It talks about cent per miles, weekly numbers, top line pay, but there's one number in this industry they rarely even explain this clearly. And this is your survival number. Not profit, not success, survival. This is the number you need just to keep the wheels turning and your life from sliding backwards if you go into one of these lease purchases or being an owner-operator. And if you don't know it, every decision you make is being made in the dark. Survival gross is the minimum amount of money you must bring in every week just to stay afloat. Not to build anything, not to save anything, not to even feel about getting ahead. Just to survive. It includes your truck payment, your insurance, your fuel just to roll, the carrier's deductions, the stuff that never stops billing you, whether the week goes well or it doesn't. And here's the part that drivers get really stuck at. You can hit that number, you can clear it, you can say that I made it and still not be moving forward at all. It's crazy, right? Makes you feel rough, and it's not a good feeling. But let's talk about that $1,300 a week truck payment. On its own, it doesn't sound insane. A lot of drivers hear that number and think, okay, I can manage this, I can do this, I can work hard and make this work. But that payment doesn't exist by itself. Once you stack on the insurance, these fuel, the deductions, and real world expenses on top of it, the weekly pressure ramps up fast, and these companies inflate these numbers to even make more profit off it. And this is where drivers get trapped, because they hit the weekly gross and they feel still like they're broke. That feeling matters. That feeling is the warning sign that no one is talking about. Here's how drivers convince themselves everything is fine. You have a good week, the freight moves, nothing breaks, the dispatch lined up, the payment clears, and the fuel is covered. And it feels like, see, this works. But one good week does not prove a business model. It just means nothing went wrong yet. And trucking is not a business where nothing ever goes wrong. It's a business where something always does. And that's why relying on good weeks is dangerous. Because good weeks don't build margins. They hide the lack of it. Let's take a quick pause here for just a second. If this is hitting home for you, I really appreciate you being here and spending your time with us. I want you to understand, I know how this feels and I know how you're feeling. Big Rig Nation exists for one reason, and that's to make sure drivers actually understand the math and the reality before it costs them years of their lives and going into debt. If you're getting value out of this, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next breakdowns that we're putting out, because the beginning of the year is starting and we're going to come out heavy. And with the holidays here, I just want to say this too. Wherever you're watching from, I hope you get some real time with your family, some rest, and a safe end to the year. So with that being said, all right, let's keep going, because this next part explains why surviving starts to feel like progress. When you're barely covering survival, it feels like progress because the pain stops temporarily. You see, the bills are paid, the phone stops buzzing, The pressure eases for just a moment. But easing pressure is not the same thing as moving forward. If nothing changed at the end of the week, no cushion, no momentum, then all you did was survive. Surviving feels productive until life shows up. When your payment is $1,300 a week, the pressure never shuts off. You're not choosing loads based on what's smart anymore. What you're doing is you're choosing loads based on what's keeping you alive. That's when bad loads start looking acceptable. That's when long days feel mandatory. That's when rest feels irresponsible. And if they let you pick loads, you'll be lucky. This is not because drivers are reckless. It's because the math is squeezing you. This is the quiet shift most drivers really don't even notice. You stop saying no, you stop waiting for better freight, and you stop protecting your time. You run because stopping feels dangerous. And once that happens, you're no longer running a business. What you're doing is reacting to you're reacting to pressure. That's not ownership. That's what we call survival mode in business. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about the week that nobody ever plans for. And this is your breakdown week. This payment doesn't stop. The insurance doesn't stop. The bills don't stop. These deductions don't ever quit. But the truck does. That's when drivers realize something uncomfortable. You see, there was never margin. One breakdown wipes out multiple good weeks, not because you failed, but because the math never had room. This is where things get really dangerous in trucking, because once you've put the time in, once you've invested all that effort, and once you sacrificed family time at that too, walking away feels like failure. So instead of asking, is this really working? Drivers ask, how do I survive one more week? You see, this is how short-term pressure turns into long-term traps. Not because drivers are weak, but because the system rewards endurance, not clarity. This isn't anti-owner operator. This isn't anti-lease purchase. This isn't anti-blindfold. If you know what your survival number is and still choose it, that's informed. If you don't know, that's gambling. And that's where the real trap is. And too many drivers are forced to gamble without being told they're at the table. Most drivers don't ignore this number because they're careless. They ignore it because the industry trains them to. From day one, trucking teaches you to focus on movement and not margins. It teaches you to focus on miles, loads, cent per mile, staying busy, percentages. So when someone finally talks about survival versus profit, it gets really uncomfortable, that conversation. Because if you admit the number doesn't work, you have to ask an even harder question. How long have I been running just to stay in place? And you know what? That's not easy to face. So drivers push it away. They tell themselves next week's going to get better. Next month will smooth out. The next run's going to fix it. That's not denial. It's not. That's survival psychology. You see, most recruiters aren't sitting there trying to destroy drivers' lives. They don't have to lie. They just don't show the full picture. They talk about gross, not margins. They talk about potential, not pressure. And they talk about averages, not worst weeks. Because if they showed you survival gross first, trucks wouldn't roll. You wouldn't jump into that new lease purchase or go to that company to be an owner operator. You see, trucking depends on trucks rolling, not on drivers building margins. And that's why this number stays hidden in plain sight for a reason. When you don't know your survival number, recruiters control the entire conversation. They talk about upside, they talk about opportunity, they talk about how busy you'll be. Once you know your number, the math starts talking back. Suddenly you hear promises differently. Suddenly busy doesn't sound like profitable. Suddenly you ask better questions. That's power. Once you understand survival versus profit, you stop chasing everything. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop mistaking motion for progress. You start seeing trucking decisions a lot clearly, not easier, clearer. And clarity changes outcomes. This isn't fear, it's clarity. Clarity is uncomfortable, but it's the first step out of the trap. Nobody can make these decisions for you, but nobody should be making them blind. And that's the difference. Learn your survival number. And once you get that information, you control your future.